The morning silence was broken by the constant blaring of the alarm clock. Struggling to get his head off the soft cushion, Trevor forced his eyes open. He tried to shake off the haze of sleep by stretching idly, like a cat, but fatigue got the better of him. He groaned, buried his face in the cushion, and closed his eyes. He rolled onto his other side and said, "I really don't want to get up." His body begged for only 15 more minutes of sleep, but he had a tough work week ahead of him that required all of his attention. After lying still for a while, he let out a deep sigh, straightened up, and swung his legs over the side of the bed. "Trevor, get up!" The sound of Clara's voice came from the restroom. She showed up a few seconds later. Being a real morning person who was full of energy as soon as she got up, she was completely different from him. While Trevor felt his vitality ebbing with each morning, she was already rushing through her routine, prepared to face the day with her typical cheerfulness. He let out another sigh, stretched again, and padded off to the restroom. He stood in front of the mirror, wiping his eyes with the heel of his hand as he gazed at his tired reflection. Clara had gone to the kitchen, as she always did in the morning. While she was making breakfast, he could hear her singing quietly. Like a wire on the verge of breaking, his nerves felt tense. "Good morning," she greeted with a smile as he entered the kitchen, and she gave him a hot cup of coffee. "How are you feeling? Another difficult night?" He looked into her gentle, loving eyes, but he was too preoccupied to answer right now. His phone suddenly buzzed loudly on the table. He grabbed for it and hardly acknowledged Clara. "Good morning," he said in a flat, deadpan voice. He didn't have time for small conversation or any discussion at all in the mornings. He was thinking about something more serious. Ignoring Clara's inquiry, he hit the power button and started going through his inbox. The kitchen was filled with the strong scent of coffee, but it didn't help him relax. His eyes were fixed on the television as he sipped it absently, his face tightening with every second that went by. "Damn it," he said abruptly, his expression contorted in exasperation. At his shout, Clara, who was standing near the stove, whirled around, her face immediately becoming worried. She went closer and arched an eyebrow, asking, "What's wrong?" With his fury erupting, Trevor looked at the TV, before turning to face his wife and feeling the annoyance grow. "Work problems," he said abruptly as he grabbed his shoulder bag and tossed the phone onto the table. "Big ones." Clara's concern was obvious, but she was accustomed to his reserved manner. She felt helpless to approach Trevor in situations like these, since he seldom ever talked about the specifics. She said, "Are you not going to eat, Trevor? It's been forever since we've had a morning together." He was already on the verge of panic, though. As he left, he glanced at her and threw his bag over his shoulder. "No time for breakfast, Clara," he said in a cold, piercing voice. "I have a crucial meeting. I must leave." She hurried after him and yelled, "Trevor, hold on." However, he had already arrived at the door. With his back to her, he said, "I'll be late," in a crackly voice. "I can't talk now." The kitchen was once again filled with quiet as he rushed out and slammed the door behind him. A twinge of hatred tightened Clara's chest as she stood still in the center of the room. She had been plagued by the idea that her spouse was vanishing lately. Even though he had always been reserved and preoccupied with his personal problems, it felt worse now, as though he were a stranger with a familiar face. Clara sighed deeply as she gazed at the unfinished coffee cup. She had always thought that things would be simpler with assistance and patience, but now she was running out of patience. Trevor felt more like a fixture than her companion in the drab monotony that had become her existence. She let out another sigh, sunk into a chair at the table, and took out her phone in the hopes of diverting her attention for a short while. Her mind, however, kept returning to him. She searched her mind for reasons why he had become so aloof, but she was unable to find any. She was sitting there looking at her phone absently when her eyes strayed to a picture on the shelf next to the cup. It displayed her and Trevor as they had been when they first met, full of optimism and the conviction that they could create something tangible and enduring. But now, something had clearly gone off the rails. Suddenly, her little cat, Ruby, padded into the doorway. Clara smiled as the fluffy creature leaped onto her lap, nuzzling for attention. Ruby was the only one who didn't pull away, the only soul not locked in its own world. Trevor arrived at work a bit later than usual. The office was the same as ever, spotless hallways, grim-faced employees, and the soft thud of footsteps on carpet. He breezed past his team without a word, barely registering their presence. His mind was locked on work. Stepping into his office, he felt a fleeting wave of relief wash over him, familiar ground at last. But it didn't last. He shrugged off his coat, draped it over a chair, pulled out his phone, and skimmed a few emails. As usual, the news was grim. One project needed urgent attention, another was lagging, and a third was stalled by missing data. Trevor set the phone down and glanced at his secretary, Holly, who was seated by the window. "Holly, get me some coffee and round up the department heads for 10, he said, not bothering to look up. "Will do, Trevor," she replied, a hint of hesitation in her tone. Minutes later, as he flipped open a folder of fresh reports, his assistant, Caleb, stepped in. The man looked rattled, and Trevor clocked it instantly. "What's wrong, Caleb?" His voice was icy, detached. "Trevor, it's the expansion project. We've hit snags, not just in our department, but across the board. Deliveries might be delayed," Caleb started. But Trevor cut him off, his expression darkening. "We've got investor talks at the end of the week, and you're dumping this on me now." Trevor's voice boomed, reverberating through the office. Caleb flinched, rooted across from him. The room went dead quiet, but the staff in the hallway knew exactly what was unfolding. Trevor didn't raise his voice without cause, but when he did, it chilled everyone. "Do you get what this means?" He snatched the report folder and slammed it onto the desk. "This isn't just a problem, it's a disaster, and I'm the one who has to clean it up." Caleb stood mute, at a loss for words. "We'll fix it, Trevor. We're on it. Everything's going to be fine," Caleb stammered. But Trevor wasn't hearing it. He fixed his assistant with a glare, his anger unmasked. "I don't want promises. I want results. Get out, Caleb, and don't come back with garbage like this." Caleb slipped out without a peep, knowing better than to argue. The whole office could tell it was going to be a brutal week. The whole office could tell he was in for a brutal week. Trevor swiveled to check the clock. It was nearly 10. The department heads were waiting in the meeting room, and he braced himself for what lay ahead. The meeting room buzzed with chatter as everyone scrambled to tackle the latest issues. But the moment Trevor appeared in the doorway, the room went still, as if someone had hit pause. Silence swallowed the noise. He stood there, ignoring the sea of eyes on him. His gaze swept the room, taking in the faces of his team. Then it locked on Brooke, the marketing department head. She was the one who'd screwed up, a mistake that could lose them a major client. "Whose fault is this?" Trevor asked, his voice cutting like a blade. No one dared speak. Even the usual excuse-makers held their tongues. Finally, Brooke broke the silence. "Trevor, the mistake came from my department," she said, her tone wavering as she tried to explain. But the dread in her voice betrayed her. She knew the stakes were high. Trevor didn't bother with a lecture. "You're fired." The words landed like a gavel. The room froze, stunned by the abruptness. Brooke's mouth fell open, her face a mask of shock, but no sound came out. "Out," he barked. Her face drained of color. She fumbled to gather her papers, tears brimming in her eyes, and bolted from the room. "Hey, hold on," one of the team members piped up, stepping forward. But Trevor was done listening. He wheeled on the others, his eyes ice cold. His voice grew sharper, biting. "Let this be a lesson. Anyone who doesn't fix their screw-ups in time ends up like her." He didn't hide his fury. "You're here to lift this company up, not drag it down. He strode to the whiteboard, listing the key issues, and stood there silent for a moment, lost in thought. Then he turned back. I want updated reports by tonight. Dismissed. The team filed out, some relieved, others on edge. Trevor knew these moves were brutal but necessary. Still, deep down, something gnawed at him. Maybe he'd lost control of the situation. Maybe trust. Whatever it was, his duty to the company always trumped everything else. Once the last employee slipped out and the door clicked shut, Trevor sank into his chair and closed his eyes. He sat there, wrestling with the chaos in his head, searching for a way forward. Then, with a frustrated grunt, he slammed the office door and stormed down the empty hallway. Outside, he gulped the fresh air, letting it loosen the knot in his chest for the first time all day. He headed to his car, slid behind the wheel, and yanked the door shut. Without hesitation, he dialed a number. "Lauren, I need to blow off some steam. I'm coming over," he said, hanging up before she could reply. As he drove, the edge started to fade, replaced by anticipation. He pictured her waiting, lace outfit, sultry smile, those deep eyes that could erase his problems, if only for a while. Her confidence, her ease, the way she kept the spark alive. He craved it. At Lauren's place, she was already at the door, as if she'd sensed him pulling up. She wrapped her arms around him the second he stepped inside, their lips crashing together in a hungry kiss. Her short lace robe clung to her, making her impossible to resist. His hand slid to her waist, pulling her tight as he breathed her in, savoring her warmth. After long, heated minutes of kisses and wandering hands, they tumbled into the bedroom. Sprawled beside her on the bed, Trevor felt the day's tension finally melt away, giving way to a quiet, blissful calm. Staring at the ceiling, lost in thought, an idea sparked. "Hey," he said, rolling toward Lauren and brushing her hand lightly. "I've got an investor meeting this weekend. I need a date, and taking my wife isn't an option. Will you come?" Lauren arched a playful brow, giving him a slow, teasing look. "Really?" she purred, smirking. "What's in it for me?" He chuckled, biting his lip. "What do you want?" She tilted her head, pretending to mull it over, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his chest. "That bracelet I showed you," she said, her tone coy but firm. "Done," Trevor replied, wrapping an arm around her shoulders and pulling her close. "It's yours." She grinned, satisfied, and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "All right, you've got me. When do I need to be ready?" she asked, her eyes glinting with curiosity. "I'll text you the time and place later." He slid his arm around her neck, drawing her closer. There was a gentle passion in their touch, an effortless comfort, as if they'd known each other forever and could read each other without words. When Trevor pulled up to his house, dusk had already cloaked the streets. The windows glowed with warm light. He cut the engine but lingered in the car, reluctant to move. The day had been brutal. His mind churned with work, the looming investor meeting, and the fleeting relief of his time with Lauren. Exhaustion dragged at him. The thought of an evening with Clara, more a fixture of routine than a source of solace, did nothing to lift his spirits. With a weary sigh, he climbed out of the car and trudged to the house. The smell of dinner hit him as soon as he stepped inside, rich and inviting. Clara, waiting in the dining room, perked up at the sound of the door. "Trevor, honey, dinner's ready. Come eat while it's hot," she called. He gave a curt nod, shed his coat, and shuffled to the kitchen, each step heavy with fatigue. At the table, he took in the spread, steak with a side of fresh veggies, homemade bread, all laid out with care. "How was your day?" Clara asked, slicing into her steak and taking a bite. She offered a small smile, trying to thaw his mood. "Rough," Trevor said tersely. "Those morons botched the numbers. The investor meeting's Friday. If it flops, the whole project's toast. So is the company's rep." His fists clenched, his face tightening as the day replayed in his head. Clara nudged her plate aside, her eyes soft with worry. Can I help? She ventured, her voice tentative but hopeful. You know I used to crunch numbers like that. I still get it. Trevor's head snapped up. For God's sake, Clara, you've been out of it for years. I don't need the project tanking because of. He stopped short, catching the hurt flashing across her face, but he was too drained to soften the blow. Forget it. He dug back into his food, oblivious to how she turned away, hiding the sting of his words. Sorry, I just wanted to help, she murmured after a beat, eyes dropping to her plate. She fidgeted with her fork, irritation simmering beneath a familiar layer of resentment. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she quickly turned away. Trevor didn't say a word, lost in his own head. The air between them crackled with tension. Finally, Clara murmured, You know, when we got married, we used to talk about your projects all the time. You'd tell me how much my support meant to you. Now, it feels like I'm just supposed to sit on the sidelines and watch. Clara, he snapped, exhaling sharply. My head's already a mess. She nodded, biting back a reply, and turned her attention back to her steak. They finished dinner in silence. When it was over, Trevor stood and slipped into his study without a word, shutting the door behind him. He slumped at his desk, staring at the laptop screen, but his mind kept drifting back to Clara's words. A flicker of guilt tugged at him for how he'd brushed her off, but he shoved it down, burying himself in work instead. Meanwhile, Clara lingered in the half-empty dining room, gazing at her barely touched plate. Her thoughts looped back to their exchange. Years ago, he'd rush home and spill every detail of his day. She'd been part of it then. Now, their talks were just hollow snippets. She was exhausted, worn out from her efforts to reach him, crashing against his sharp words. Deep down, she knew their marriage had been unraveling for a while, but admitting it felt like surrender. With a quiet resolve, she rose, cleared the table, and trudged to the bedroom. Clara, you're strong. You can handle this, she whispered to herself. She lay down, staring at the ceiling, trying to block out the chill that had settled into their life like a meal gone cold. Trevor woke the next morning with a sour edge, the previous night's tension lingering like a bad taste. He dragged himself out of bed and shuffled downstairs, expecting the usual breakfast spread, but the kitchen was empty, silent, the table bare. He frowned, scanning the room, half expecting Clara to appear. Nothing but the echo of his footsteps on the tiles. Clara, he called. No answer. Minutes ticked by, and his irritation morphed into a faint unease. He grabbed his phone and dialed her, but all he got was short, unanswered beeps. Where the hell are you? He muttered, annoyance simmering. But work wouldn't wait. He pushed the thought aside, grabbed his keys, and headed out. At the door, he cast a quick glance back at the empty house, a mix of frustration and something like worry tugging at him. Meanwhile, Clara stepped back into the world after her morning run, feeling lighter, refreshed. The routine had become her lifeline, a way to shake off the daily grind. Today, though, she wasn't ready to face home. She wanted something for herself. Pausing at the street corner, she pulled out her phone and dialed a friend. It rang longer than usual, then a bright voice picked up. Hey, Clara, where have you been? It's been forever. Clara forced a casual tone. Want to grab coffee, catch up? Love to. Give me an hour. I'll meet you there, Lauren chirped, clearly delighted. By noon, Clara sat in a cozy cafe, savoring the scent of fresh coffee and the hum of chatter around her. Her eyes flicked to the clock now and then, but she wasn't surprised. Lauren was late, she always was. The door swung open, and there she was, striding toward the table with a look that screamed irritation. Hi, sweetie. Clara stood and hugged her. Hey, Lauren groaned, rolling her eyes. You won't believe this. The salon totally botched my nails. I told them the exact shade and they went darker. How do you even trust people these days? Clara smiled, masking her mild amusement. Yeah, that's rough. Beyond rough. Anyway, forget it. What's up with you? Lauren leaned in, curiosity lighting her face. Clara hesitated, debating whether to open up. She sighed softly. Lauren, I think Trevor and I might be headed for a divorce. Lauren's lips curled into a faint, almost amused smile, as if Clara had cracked a joke. Why do you say that? She asked, propping her chin on her hand. We're like roommates, Clara said, glancing away as sadness welled up. Barely talk, let alone anything more. All I do is keep the house running. Lauren sipped her coffee and smirked. Maybe that's not the worst thing. I mean, you've kind of let yourself go, and he's the face of the company. You've got to keep up. Clara stiffened, caught off guard. She'd hoped for a shred of empathy or at least a kind word. Instead, she got a jab. Thanks, she said, shaking her head with a trace of bitterness. You've always had a way of lifting my spirits. Oh, don't take it like that. Lauren grinned, unfazed. Who else is going to be straight with you? If you want to hold his attention, switch things up. Go shopping, revamp your look. She paused, then added, I'm just saying, don't take it too hard. Men are visual, you know. Clara stared into her coffee, the meeting leaving her emptier than she'd expected. Sometimes, I just want someone who gets me, she said quietly, her gaze drifting past Lauren. Someone who sees me as more than background noise. Lauren shrugged, barely registering the weight of her words. Clara, you're overthinking it. Everything's fixable if you've got a spark of energy left. She glanced at her watch and jolted upright. Oh crap, I've got a massage in 15 minutes. She pecked Clara's cheek. Don't mope, think about what I said. And with that, she breezed out, leaving Clara alone at the table. Clara watched Lauren disappear out the door, the sting of their conversation lingering like bitter coffee. She drained her cup, emptiness settling deeper inside. A quiet voice in her head whispered that change was overdue. But what kind of change? She couldn't pin it down. She left the cafe, pushing Lauren's harsh words to the back of her mind. Her steps were light, though her heart tugged with the truth. Her life was crumbling. The park glowed under a wash of sunlight, the air crisp and cool. Clara veered toward it, hoping nature might soothe the storm churning inside her. Lately, her life felt like a spiraling mess. Trevor's distance, the hollow ache, her friends' letdowns. Lost in thought, she wandered the paths, head down, tracing the golden leaves scattered beneath her feet. Then she looked up and stopped cold, her breath catching. A tall man in a gray coat approached. The sight was so familiar, she questioned if it was real. Justin slipped out before she could stop herself. He glanced up, saw her, and broke into a smile. That warm, genuine smile that always made her feel seen. Clara, I can't believe it's you, he said, closing the distance. You look as incredible as ever. A faint blush warmed her cheeks. Thanks, Justin, she said shyly, her pulse quickening. What brings you here? Are you back? Just work. In town for a week. Then I'm off again, he replied, still smiling. Running into you like this, it's unreal. Want to walk? Clara couldn't hide a flicker of excitement, but kept it cool. Sure, why not? They fell into step, chatting like old friends, catching up. Justin shared snippets of his life, his job, the people he'd met. Clara listened, marveling at how much time had slipped by since they'd last seen each other. Ever get married? She asked out of the blue, a playful smile tugging at her lips. Justin laughed, shrugging. Nope, never quite got over you breaking my heart back then. He brushed her shoulder lightly. Clara froze, her smile fading, her gaze drifting. For the first time in ages, something inside her stirred awake. What about you? He asked softly. Married? Yeah, she whispered, eyes dropping. Justin studied her face, his smile turning wistful. But not happy, he said, his voice gentle, knowing. What's going on, Clara? His words hit deep, unlocking a floodgate she'd kept shut too long. Tears welled up, spilling over before she could stop them. Clara, hey, Justin murmured, pulling her into a tender hug. You okay? Want to talk?" She choked back a sob, leaning into him. His embrace felt safe, steady, something she'd craved for years. He was a friend, someone she'd once trusted completely, and suddenly her problems didn't feel so impossible. "I'm lost, Justin," she said when the tears slowed. "Trevor and we don't connect anymore. He takes me for granted. I'm more housekeeper than wife." "That's tough, Clara," Justin replied quietly. "Marriage shouldn't feel like that." She bowed her head. "I'm just furniture to him. There, but invisible." Justin met her eyes. "You deserve better. You deserve to be valued." He took her hands. "You deserve happiness." Clara exhaled shakily. "Don't you ever want to just escape it all? Even for a second?" She managed a tear-streaked smile. "I can't remember the last time I did something for me." He paused, then grinned. "How about the Ferris wheel? Remember that time we rode it years ago?" Clara's face lit up, the memory sparking joy. And just like that, she felt lighter than she had in forever. "Why not?" she said, a giddy rush bubbling up. They dashed to the ride, laughing like kids. The car climbed slowly, and Clara held her breath as the city unfurled below. At the top, Justin took her hand, his eyes locking with hers. "You have no idea how much I've missed you," he said softly. Leading in, his lips met hers, and her heart thudded alive. That kiss tasted like freedom. For a heartbeat, the world melted away. "Justin," she breathed when they parted. "This is wrong." He smiled, squeezing her hand. "Sometimes wrong is what reminds us we're alive." His eyes held a quiet, warm certainty. She looked at him, his words sinking deeper than she'd expected. Years with Trevor had dulled her to what happiness could feel like. "Dinner tonight?" Justin asked, a hopeful tilt to his smile. Her pulse raced. "Yeah, I'd like that," she whispered. Excitement flared in her chest, mingling with anticipation. As they stepped off the Ferris wheel and left the park, warmth bloomed inside her, for the first time in ages. Purpose, too. The evening sky hung heavy with clouds, but a light flickered within her. Getting ready for dinner, she checked herself in the mirror again and again. She smoothed her hair, touched up her makeup, slipped into her favorite black dress, sleek, elegant, softening her curves. She smiled at her reflection. Tonight, she wanted to feel beautiful, to feel alive. A flutter of nerves danced in her chest, like the thrill of a first date from years ago. Justin was right on time. His smile greeted her the instant she opened the door. "You look stunning, Clara," he said, his eyes lingering on her. A blush crept up her cheeks at the compliment. "Thanks, Justin," she replied, a mix of shy embarrassment and quiet delight warming her. They climbed into his car, and as they drove, Clara felt a rare lightness bubble up inside. For the first time in ages, she could let her worry slip away. Soon, they pulled up to a cozy restaurant, Justin's favorite spot in the city, he'd said. Inside, he helped her out of her coat, and the waiter ushered them to a table by the window. Outside, streetlights cast a soft glow on the rain-slicked asphalt, giving the night an almost magical sheen. "You know, every time I come here, I think of you," Justin said once they'd settled in. Clara smiled, trying to mask the flutter in her chest. "Really? Why is that?" Justin leaned back, his gaze steady on her. "Because you're the one who taught me to savor the little things, way back when." He paused, choosing his words. "Being here always feels like you're close by." His words struck a chord, and she dropped her eyes, her pulse quickening. "I think about those days a lot too," she admitted softly, then added with a smile, "more than I probably should." "Is that such a bad thing?" Justin teased, though his eyes held something deeper than humor. Clara laughed, realizing how long it had been since she'd felt this at ease with anyone. "No, not at all. It's just—" She hesitated, groping for the right words. "It's strange to feel this connected after all these years." Justin gave a gentle nod as if he understood exactly what she meant. The waiter dropped off menus, and as they picked their dishes, The conversation slid into easy banter and shared memories. "Remember our first dinner?" Clara asked, her eyes twinkling. "You ordered that insanely spicy dish by mistake and tried to play it off like it was nothing." "I nearly torched my tongue, but I was too stubborn to admit it. Just wanted to impress you," Justin finished, shaking his head with a grin. "Well, it worked," she said, smiling. "I thought you were the bravest guy alive." Justin leaned in, his gaze softening, intense, and now her heart skipped. There was a question beneath his words, one that felt years in the making. She steadied herself, keeping it light. "I think you're still the guy I can laugh with and be myself around." Her answer eased the moment, and they slipped back into reminiscing. Justin shared tales from his travels, funny anecdotes, slices of his life. It stirred memories of their old dreams, a big family, a shared future. When their food arrived, Clara took a bite of her steak and grinned at him. "This might be the best dinner I've had in years." His eyes lit up. "Glad to hear it." He paused, then added, "Think we could do it again?" "I'm not sure that's wise," she said with a laugh, though a hint of regret shadowed her tone. Justin set his fork down, his expression turning serious. "Clara, if you could change something, go back to when life was simpler, would you?" Her gaze drifted, lost in thought. "Sometimes I think I would," she admitted after a beat. "But we can't live in the past. What we had, it was beautiful, Justin." She took a deep breath. "It's always going to mean something to me." Justin reached over, brushing her hand with his. "I feel the same. But Clara, you deserve happiness, respect. Don't forget that." Her eyes prickled with tears, but she fought them back. This night was too precious to let sadness creep in. "Thanks, Justin," she whispered. "You have no idea how much I've missed this." He smiled, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "I'm here if you want me to be." The evening rolled on in the same easy rhythm. They laughed over old inside jokes, swapped stories, and savored the moment. Justin's smile glowed, his eyes warm every time they met hers. Clara felt the knots in her chest unravel, her heart beating lighter, freer, almost giddy, like a kid again. It was strange and wonderful to feel this after everything she'd been through. Later, they drove to the hotel where Justin was staying. Stepping into his room, Clara felt an odd calm settle over her. Everything clicked into place, despite the doubts and fears that had plagued her earlier. She'd pictured nights like this once, a snug room, dim light, faint music humming in the background. And now, here he was. She could finally breathe. Justin helped her out of her coat, and they settled onto the bed, pulling a blanket over them, soaking in the quiet night. "How's this place treating you?" Justin asked, stretching out and turning to face her. "Really cozy," Clara said, glancing around before her eyes landed back on him. His nearness didn't unsettle her. It felt right, comforting, like she belonged. Justin traced a gentle line along her shoulder, and she melted under his touch. "You know, Clara, I've got a meeting with a company Friday," he said, voice steady. "You're good with construction stuff, right?" "Not an expert, but I know enough," she replied with a smile. "I'll help however I can." He lifted his hand, brushing a finger along her shoulder again. His touch was so light, she closed her eyes for a second. "Being near you like this," Justin murmured, his words a soft secret between them. "It's more than I can put into words." Clara's heart raced. She felt strong yet fragile all at once. Right now, all she wanted was to stay here, cocooned in this safe, quiet space where nothing could shatter her peace, where she could escape the chaos of her life. "Are you sure I can actually help you?" she asked with a playful lilt, nudging the conversation somewhere lighter. Justin smiled. "Clara, you have no idea how much you've always helped me. You were there even when we didn't say it out loud. You get me without words." She met his gaze. Gratitude swelled in her chest, tinged with quiet joy. "You were everything to me once," she said softly, holding his eyes. Justin's expression shifted, a flicker of solemnity crossing his face. He brushed her shoulder. You were special to me too, Clara. I never forgot you. He paused, then added, You're part of me, always will be. Her heart fluttered again. Just then, her phone buzzed on the nightstand, slicing through the moment. Clara glanced at the screen. The name flashing made her stomach twist. She silenced the call without a word. Justin's brow lifted as he watched her set the phone down. Not answering? His voice was gentle, but curiosity lingered. Clara tensed, avoiding the screen. There's nothing to say to him, she said, masking the exhaustion Trevor's name dragged up. We're too far apart. Justin didn't push. His gaze sharpened, attentive. You don't have to pick up if you don't want to. He leaned closer, tracing a finger along her cheek, trying to ease the storm he saw brewing in her. I want you here, safe, he murmured. Her chest tightened at his words. His warmth seeped into her, steadying her frayed edges. I don't know what tomorrow holds, she whispered, almost to herself. But right now, I don't want to go back to that life. I want this. Justin didn't reply with words. Instead, he wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close until her head rested on his shoulder. You're not alone, Clara, he whispered, his voice low and warm. We're here together. I'll stay however long you need. She pressed into him, his breath grazing her skin. In that instant, she let the future fade. All she craved was this: comfort, peace, this moment. Thank you, she breathed. It was all she could manage. Justin pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, then hugged her tighter. She closed her eyes, the tension in her body unraveling, melting away. She was with him. And for now, that was enough. Morning crept in with an unsettling silence. Clara couldn't bury her thoughts any longer. She slipped out of the hotel early, leaving Justin asleep in the room where she found a fleeting calm. But as she climbed into a taxi and headed home, everything inside her splintered. Anger, fatigue, it erupted in her mind, a deafening roar. She couldn't pretend her life could stay the same. When she stepped into the house, Trevor stood in the kitchen. He faced the window, a coffee cup in hand, his back rigid. The air thickened the moment she crossed the threshold. He didn't turn, but his voice cut sharp with displeasure. Where were you? It sounded like an accusation. Clara flinched. The night's emotions, every fragile thread, crashed over her. Out, running, she said, grasping for calm. Her voice quivered. In an evening dress? Trevor's anger flared, unmasked. His voice rose, jagged. He spun around, his movements sharp. His hands shot out, seizing her throat. Her breath caught as his fingers dug in. What are you doing? She gasped, shock strangling her words. Trevor didn't hear her. Rage twisted his face, his eyes blazing. What's it to you? Or did you spend the night with your lover? Stunned, Clara's words slipped out. Reckless, they spilled before she could weigh the danger. He exhaled a furious snarl. If I find out you're cheating, his grip tightened, I'll strangle you. Pain stabbed through her throat. Tears blurred her vision. Then he released her, letting her crumple to the floor. She hit the ground, panic surging, her mind reeling. Yeah, in that dress, you look pathetic, Trevor sneered, glaring down at her like she was a stain on his plans. Someone like you isn't worth bringing to negotiations. Her heart seized. Rage and despair ignited, threatening to swallow her whole. This wasn't the Trevor she'd known. He'd morphed into a stranger, a monster, and now Clara knew she couldn't stay. Trevor clenched his fists and stormed out for work, leaving her drowning in pain and confusion. Her mind churned. She had to run, flee this tyrant. It was unbearable, and she couldn't live with him anymore. Clara hauled herself up, legs shaky beneath her. Tears streaked her face. She couldn't mask her frailty any longer. Stumbling to the table, she grabbed her phone and dialed Justin. The weight stretched, agonizing. Despair clawed at her chest. Hello, his voice broke through. Tears choked her. Justin, she stammered, voice quaking. I don't know what to do. Please get me out of here. I'm scared. Silence hung on the line, then firm and steady. I'm coming. Pack your stuff, we're gone. Minutes later, Justin was at her door. He didn't speak when Clara stepped out, suitcase in tow. He just took her hand. Wordlessly, he helped her into the car and hit the gas. Silence swallowed them, thick, heavy. It was all moving too fast. Clara's emotions surged like a stormy sea. She didn't know what came next, but one truth burned clear. She was done with Trevor. Justin's grip tightened on the wheel, his jaw clenched, eyes flashing with barely contained fury in the flickering headlights. How could he muttered, voice taut with anger and hurt. Clara felt her own pain echo his. She'd never seen him like this. Staring out the window, the city blurred past. She barely registered it. Her once stable life was collapsing, and the thought wouldn't let go. You need to divorce him, Clara, Justin said, his tone softening but resolute. You can't stay with that guy. I'll get you out. You deserve more. Tears welled up again. A chill gripped her, but her heart hardened with resolve. She wasn't going back, not to that house, not to Trevor. I can't do it anymore, she whispered, more to herself than to him. A confession, a first step. Her life, raw with pain, had sparked with new purpose. Trevor seethed, days of unrelenting fury. He'd called Clara nonstop, nothing. Finally, it hit him. He had to move. Today was make or break for his company. Investor negotiations loomed. Failure wasn't an option. He dragged himself out of bed early, showered, and forced his chaos into order. Suit crisped, tie knotted tight. Documents prepped, he headed to the restaurant. One mission, sell the project's success. Personal wreckage couldn't touch his work. Stepping in with Lauren on his arm, her heels clicking sharp on the floor, her perfume cloying, his eyes snagged on a table. Clara, with Justin. Justin, one of the biggest investors. A gut punch. Trevor's chest tightened. Clara sat across from him, her presence a dagger. He froze in the doorway, mind reeling. Her eyes met his. She wasn't alone. Justin was beside her. The air crackled. Trevor's blood simmered. He fought to steady himself, but control slipped. Justin spotted him first, extending a hand with a calm smile. Mr. Staples, good to see you. Trevor shook it, fury masked behind a tight fake grin. Same, he said, voice strained. He couldn't crack now. This dinner was everything. This is my companion, Clara, Justin said smoothly. The words sliced Trevor open. Companion, a slap. We've met, he forced out, teeth gritted. She's my wife, he added, the strain breaking through. Clara's gaze was ice. How interesting. Justin smirked, a glint of something sharp in his eyes. And who's with you? The question dangled. Trevor glanced at Lauren, who adjusted her sleek red dress and flashed a coy smile. My date, he said curtly. Clara paused, then cut in, her voice low and deliberate. Someone I used to call a friend. Lauren tilted her head, lips curling into a faint, mocking grin. Oh, Clara, don't be dramatic, she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. People drift apart. It happens. Clara's stare didn't waver. Drift apart or stab in the back. Lauren laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. Please, spare me the sob story. You've been checked out for years. Someone had to step up. Clara's voice rose, edged with disbelief. You mean step into my life while I was still in it? Lauren shrugged, unfazed, sipping her wine. If you'd kept his attention, maybe I wouldn't have had to. Trevor's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent, fists balled at his sides. Silence crashed over the room, thick, electric. Every sound, dripping water, a clink of glass, amplified. All eyes swiveled between Clara and Lauren. Justin, ever the businessman, took the reins. Let's ease up, he said with a faint smile, brushing it off. We're here for business. Focus on the project. Trevor's gut iced over. He slid the documents to Justin, and they sat, diving into the details. Lauren crossed her legs, leaning closer to Trevor, her hand brushing his arm, a show for the table. He shrugged her off, barely concealing his disgust. He prayed it would end fast, that the cracks wouldn't show, but his nerves shredded. "Clara," Justin said, turning to her, "check this blueprint. Anything off?" Trevor blanched. That section had been a mess. His team swore it was fixed. Now dread clawed at him. Clara scanned it, then pointed. "Justin, the numbers don't line up," she said, voice even. Trevor shot to his feet, rage erupting. "That's impossible." Clara didn't flinch. Her face stayed blank. "Justin, this building collapses in a few years," she said, eyes still on the page. Lauren rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath. "Always so perfect, aren't you?" Clara ignored her, handing the papers to Justin. Justin set them down, leaning in. Disbelief hardened his features. "Mr. Staples," he said, rising, "I think you know, I'm out." Trevor's world tilted. Everything he'd built, gone in a blink. "We can fix it," he stammered, panic bleeding through. Justin didn't glance back. "Too late," he said. "This project's dead." Clara stood. Justin offered his hand. "Let's go," he told her. Lauren smirked, calling after them. "Run along, Clara. You're good at that." Clara paused at the door, turning back just long enough to say, "Enjoy what's left, Lauren. It won't last." They walked out. Trevor stayed rooted. Alone. Lauren reached for him. "Honey, don't worry. We'll sort it." "Get off me, you cheap nothing," he snapped, jerking away. His shout ricocheted through the room. Heads turned. And he didn't care? Rage and shame swallowed him whole. Justin and Clara drove off. Trevor remained. He'd lost it all. Clara sat in the lawyer's office, her hand steady as she signed the divorce papers. The pen scratched across the page, each stroke a quiet declaration of freedom. Justin sat beside her, his presence a calm anchor. She'd moved in with him after that night, and with his support, she found the courage to end it officially. The documents were simple, irreconcilable differences, but they carried years of unspoken weight. "I'm proud of you," Justin said softly, squeezing her hand as she slid the papers to the attorney. She smiled faintly. "It's time." Word reached Trevor fast. His phone buzzed with a text from a mutual acquaintance. Clara filed. He stared at the screen, his gut twisting, not with loss, but with calculation. Justin. She was tied to Justin now, the investor who torched his deal. If he could get her back, play the remorseful husband, maybe he could worm his way into Justin's good graces. Salvage something. The company was bleeding cash. His reputation was in tatters. He didn't want her. He wanted her leverage. He called her that night, his voice dripping with a rehearsed sincerity she'd once fallen for. "Clara, it's me," he started, pacing his dim apartment, rented now that the house was sold. "I've been a fool. I see it now. Can we talk? Just give me a chance to make it right." Clara stood in Justin's kitchen, the phone pressed to her ear. She recognized the tone, the same one he'd used to charm her years ago to dodge accountability. Her chest tightened, but not with longing, with clarity. "Trevor, there's nothing left to say," she replied, her voice cool. "You don't want me. You want something from me. I'm not that knave anymore." He bristled, dropping the act for a moment. "You're with that bastard Justin now, aren't you? Think you're so high and mighty. I know what you're doing, using him to get back at me." She laughed, sharp and short. "You think everything's about you. It's not. This is about me finally choosing myself. Goodbye, Trevor." She hung up before he could retort, her hands trembling but her resolve ironclad. He called again the next day, then the next, each message more desperate, more manipulative. "We can fix this, Clara. Think of what we had. I need you." She blocked his number. The divorce went through uncontested. Trevor had no fight left to give, not when his real battle was keeping his sinking ship afloat. 3 years passed. Clara thrived. With Justin's encouragement, she'd started a small consulting firm specializing in construction audits. Ironic, given how she'd unraveled Trevor's project. Her days were full, her nights warm with Justin's laughter and quiet affection. They hadn't married, neither felt the rush, but their bond deepened, rooted in trust. Trevor, though, had fallen hard. Bankruptcy hit after the investors pulled out one by one, spooked by the whispers of his collapse. Creditors stripped him bare. Lauren left when the money dried up, and he spiraled, odd jobs, cheap liquor, a rented room in a crumbling part of town. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms was a shadow, hollowed out by his own pride. Fate dealt them a chance meeting one gray afternoon. Clara was downtown, picking up coffee between client meetings when she saw him. Trevor stood outside a rundown diner, unshaven in a threadbare coat, haggling with a street vendor over a sandwich. His voice carried that old edge, but it was brittle now, worn thin. She almost kept walking. Almost, but something, pity, maybe, stopped her. She approached, her heels clicking on the pavement. Trevor. He turned, squinting, then froze. Recognition hit, followed by a flicker of shame he quickly masked with a crooked grin. Clara, look at you, fancy as ever. His tone aimed for charm but landed bitter. She didn't smile. How are you? He shrugged, hands shoved in his pockets. Been better. You? Fine, she said simply, studying him, the lines on his face, the slump in his shoulders. He was a wreck. You're not working. Lost it all, he admitted, eyes darting away. Bad luck. Bad choices. You know how it goes. She nodded, silent. Part of her wanted to turn and leave. But the kinder piece, the one he'd never deserved, stirred. Look, I don't want trouble, he said, sensing her hesitation. But you're with Justin, right? Big shot now. Maybe you could put in a word. Get me a gig, for old time's sake. There it was, the same old Trevor, sniffing for an angle. Her jaw tightened. No, she said flatly. You don't get to use me anymore. His grin faded, replaced by a scowl. Still holding a grudge, huh? After everything, you can't throw me a bone. It's not a grudge, she replied, voice steady. It's knowing who you are. He opened his mouth to argue, but she cut him off. Wait. She pulled a 20 from her purse and pressed it into his hand. Get something to eat. That's it, Trevor. That's all I've got for you. He stared at the bill, then at her, his pride warred with desperation. Finally, he pocketed it, muttering, thanks, real generous. She didn't reply. Turning, she walked away, the weight of him lifting with each step. He called after her, Clara, come on, but she didn't look back. At home, Justin greeted her with a kiss, sensing the shift in her mood. Rough day, he asked, pouring her a glass of wine. Just saw Trevor, she said, sinking onto the couch. He's a mess, tried to play me again. Justin sat beside her, brow raised, and gave him $20 for food. That's where it ends. He chuckled, pulling her close. You're too good for him. Maybe, she said, resting against him. But I'm done letting him take anything else. Outside, the city hummed on. Clara sipped her wine, feeling the past fade a little more. Trevor was a ghost now, broken, grasping, irrelevant. She built something real, something hers. And no one, not even him, could touch that.